Practical NLP podcast with me, Andy Smith. This week we're continuing to explore presuppositions in language. Plus we'll have a couple of exercises where you can try your hand at identifying presuppositions in what someone else says. Presuppositions of awareness. The tip-off for these is any sensory verb. See, hear, feel, touch, smell, taste, or any neutral non-sensory verb implying awareness like notice, realize, or become aware of. John could see the possibilities. That's telling you that there are possibilities. Again, even if the sentence contains a negative, John couldn't see the possibilities, you still have to accept the idea of possibilities in order to make the sense of this sentence. If you want to use this presupposition in a question, you could say, have you noticed what's happened? Which presupposes that something has happened. Or, which benefits have stood out most for you? Implies that there are benefits, and even that there may be some that you haven't noticed yet because they've been overshadowed by the more prominent ones. Presuppositions of time place an event or an action before, after, or during some other events or time periods, and can be used to imply a sequence of events. The tip-off is verb tenses or time-related words like when, stop, start, until, now, or yet. Examples. Right, this is a useful one for an after-sales or technical support situation if someone comes to you with a problem. You could say to them, I understand you're having some problems with the product. Although this is an accurate description of the situation, it's not the best way to describe it if you want the customer to feel more hopeful, because the ing in having implies something ongoing. You could say, I understand you had some problems with the product, which puts the problems in the past, but that may not be matching the customer's experience, as they're probably experiencing the problems as still going on. And they might feel like you're trying to claim that everything's okay now, even though their experience is telling them that it's not. So you could say, I understand that you've been having some problems. That's still pacing the customer's experience. Problems may have been occurring right up to this point, but it also places the experience in the past and opens up the possibility that we can fix the problems from now on. Let's look at stop and start. Just stop and notice how much you've learned so far. When you tell people to stop, that's what they tend to do. They stop doing everything, including thinking, at least for a moment. So it's a good idea to follow that immediately with what you want them to do. When did you stop sabotaging yourself? Presupposes that there was a time when you were sabotaging yourself, but that time is now over. Have you started to realize your potential? Implies that there was a time when you weren't realizing your potential, and that time may or may not be over. When will you start to realize your potential definitely says that you haven't yet, but suggests that you can. You may not have realized yet how much you've learned. Presupposes that the realization will happen. Adverb or adjective presuppositions. The tip-off for this is, guess what, an adverb or an adjective. Here's the easy definition of those grammatical terms. An adjective modifies a noun, while an adverb modifies a verb. The clue is in the name. So the easy in easy definition leads you to expect that it will be easy to understand. And it probably is easier than if we just said, this is the definition, because you won't be telling yourself, oh, this is grammar, it's going to be hard. Easy and hard are both adjectives. See how they change the way your internal representation of whatever noun they're applied to? If I say, here's the important thing about adjectives, that pretty much ensures that you'll pay more attention to it than the rest of the presentation. Interestingly, the important thing about both adjectives and adverbs is that you already use both of them expertly, even if you didn't know that's what they were called. Now, fortunately, when you put an adverb at the start of a sentence, it places a frame around what you're going to say that tells people how to receive that information. Here's 3 examples of exactly the same information, but using different adverbs to put different frames around it. And of course, this will also give some examples of adverbs, so you'll be able to go, oh, that's what adverbs are. Notice how each one would be received. Unfortunately, sales were unchanged this year. Oh no, it's terrible, no increase in sales. Fortunately, sales were unchanged this year. Phew, what a relief! We must have been expecting them to go down, or that's what's implied by fortunately anyway. Interestingly, sales were unchanged this year. Well, yes, that is interesting. I wonder what caused that. See how useful that could be? The next kind of presupposition is called the inclusive or exclusive or. The tip-off here, you won't be surprised to learn, is the word or. We've grouped them together here because the word or will imply the alternatives that you mention, but it excludes the alternatives that you don't. If you have children that are young enough, you can use exclusive ors to give them the illusion of choice while still getting them to do what you want. Do you want to have your bath first or tidy your room? Of course, after a while, they will eventually catch on and say, "Who says I have to do either?" But it's great while it lasts. That's known as a double bind. Milton Erickson used to use them a lot to give his clients choice about how they moved in the direction that Milton wanted them to. I don't know if you'll want to go into a trance now or after a while, and whether you would like a deep trance or a lighter trance. But they were going into trance whatever. It's also the basis of the alternative close in sales. Would you like it in red or black? Will you be using cash or credit card? Which works well as long as the customer is at the right point in their buying cycle. Using the exclusive or too early in their buying cycle would make them feel pressured, and you'd lose rapport and possibly the sale. Another situation where you should be aware of exclusive or presuppositions in your own language is if you're gathering customer or user requirements, or gathering information about a client's problem. You'll notice that "Are you working with a large team or a smaller one?" is a closed question. Although it's not going for a yes or no answer, it's still giving the listener just two alternatives to choose from. It's forcing the conversation down a particular path, quite possibly in the direction of your preconceived notions of what the solution should be, which means you may be missing important information. Open questions that don't limit the alternatives on offer work much better. What size of team are you working with? Other words that exclude other possibilities are words like only, as in only you can decide, which excludes the possibility of me or anyone else trying to tell you what to choose, and just, as in just focus on the essentials, which excludes focusing on anything else. The final type of presupposition we're considering is called ordinal, and the tip-off is words like first, second, third, or last, which imply a position in a list. Remember that example from earlier on in these audios? I only closed the deal on the 4th meeting. So that's presupposing that there were 3 meetings before that. The word then can also imply a list or sequence. Find the right customers, then find out their needs, then tell them how you can meet those needs. Ordinal presuppositions are great for coaches to embed learning, especially when combined with presuppositions of awareness. It may not be until the 3rd or 4th time it happens that you'll notice how much better you've become at asserting yourself. Presupposes that even if you don't notice it yet, positive change could already be occurring. Let's try a couple of quick exercises in identifying the presuppositions in what people say. Imagine someone said the following sentence to you. You may want to write this sentence down. I'm not sure whether or not I should stop fiddling my expenses. Now, here's some comments on that, and I want you to identify whether they're presupposed in the sentence or just assumptions that the commenter has made that aren't necessarily true. So, A. He has expenses. Is that a presupposition or an unwarranted assumption? What do you think? Okay, I would say it's presupposed in the sentence. It would make no sense to say, my expenses, if the person had no expenses. Actually, just to show that presuppositions are everywhere, that comment contains another presupposition, which is what? That's right. He has expenses presupposes that the speaker is male. B. He doesn't like his job. Presupposition or assumption? I'd say it's an assumption. The sentence says nothing about how he feels about his job, and we'd be jumping to conclusions if we decided he didn't like it. In NLP, by the way, this making assumptions about what someone is thinking or feeling is called a mind read. And you will have noticed that people do it all the time. C. He currently fiddles his expenses. Presupposition or assumption? Well, it makes no sense to talk about stopping fiddling expenses unless the speaker is already doing it. So that presupposes that the fiddling is already going on. D. He is an indecisive character. Presupposition or assumption? It will be jumping to conclusions to decide that his whole character is indecisive on the basis of just one example. He might be ultra-decisive in every other area of his life. So it's an assumption. That's it for this week's podcast. See you next time.